Securing a serverless API written in Go using AWS Cognito. Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by my channel. My name is Brian and I'm a serverless developer specializing in AWS and Go. Today, we're going to do a continuation in the series I've been building on how to create a serverless API in AWS using Go. In the last video, we set up an AWS Cognito user pool, which is the foundation of getting authentication set up using our Go Lambda functions and API Gateway. In this video, we're going to take the serverless API we've written so far in API Gateway, plus the Cognito user pool in the last video, and combine them together to secure that API. Before we start though, if you like this kind of content, anything serverless and Go related, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, give this video a like and share it with your friends. And without that, let's get to it. All right, so I've got the AWS console up. Now, before we actually get started, there's a couple pieces of information we need to grab from Cognito before we can set up what's called an authorizer in API Gateway, which that authorizer is going to handle all the heavy duty checking of those authentication tokens, so we don't have to write the code to do it ourselves. But from the console, go ahead and search for Cognito in the global search and select it from the list. Now inside of Cognito, we're going to select the user pool that you've been working with. I'm actually going to select the Go API user pool. I honestly can't remember which of these two I was working with before, but this one will do just fine. So if the first thing we need to grab is this user pool ID, because it's going to be important for us to create to add into the authorizer configuration. So I'm going to copy that, go to VS Code, and I've got a notes file here. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in there. Now let's go ahead into the app integration section. Let's copy the Cognito domain, which is going to be important as well. And then the last thing we're going to need to grab is all the way down at the bottom, this client ID. Copy this and also paste it inside of our little notes file, just because this is the stuff that we're going to need from Cognito. Okay, so back in AWS, let's go and search for API Gateway. Now that we're here, we'll select our API. First Go API is the one that we've been working with. Now, if I, on the left-hand side, go to the authorization section, let me zoom in here a little bit just to make it a little bit bigger. Let's go to Manage Authorizers, and we need to add a new authorizer, again, which is going to handle the heavy lifting of checking the token to make sure it's valid. So let's go ahead and click Create. You want to select JWT, and then we'll just name the authorizer Cognito Authorizer. Okay, the identity source can remain the same. This is going to be the authorization header of the request. And then the issuer URL, this is where we're going to use some of that info. So in the issuer URL is the URL where those keys exist that API Gateway is going to use to validate the token. So I'm going to copy a snippet here. We need to start off with Cognito IDP .US East 1, where's the region, wherever your region's hosted, .amazonaws.com. And if you put a / at the end of that, and then grab the user pool ID, which is this first value that we grab, and let's go ahead and paste that in after that. Now, the next thing we need to do is add an audience, and this is where that client ID is going to be pasted in. So we'll grab the second guy here, and we'll go ahead and paste that in, and then click Create. Now that we have the authorizer created, let's go ahead and attach it to the route that we've been working with. So if I go into Attach Authorizers to Route, select our Any method, and then we can select an existing authorizer and just check that. It's going to give some information about the authorizer itself down here, and then we can just click on Attach Authorizer. And then Save. Okay, so our authorizer is attached. Now, if I head back into our test file here that we've been working with, we can see that if I send this request, we're actually going to get a 401 unauthorized, which is exactly what we want back. We want API Gateway to be stopping that request from coming through if the token sent through, which in this case is none, does not validate against Cognito, which is exactly what we want. So next, let's try and generate one of those tokens and add it into a request just to see it actually pass and go through. So in order to get one of those tokens, we're going to use the same flow that we used in the previous video, authenticating with those built-in forms in Cognito, and then forwarding us to jwt.io so we could see the token more easily. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new tab. So this is the template we used in the last one. We're going to replace Cognito domain with the first thing that we grabbed from Cognito, or the URL that we grabbed from Cognito, this one right here. Paste that in there. And then if you look, there's also a parameter here for client ID. So we're going to replace that. Let's grab the client ID from our notes here. and go ahead and paste that in. So this is the full URL you should look at. It's whatever your Cognito domain is, /OAuth2/authorize, and we have a couple of query parameters in here. Response type is set to token, client ID is set to the client ID we grabbed from Cognito, and then redirect URI is that jwt.o URL that we added into the callbacks when we configured Cognito in the last video. So I'll go ahead and hit enter, and we should get a sign-on form. I'm going to sign in with my credentials here. And once our sign-in is successful, we're redirected back to jwt.io with this token right here in the field. So I'm going to grab this, copy that, and then let's go back into VS Code. I'm going to open up my tests file again, and we'll add a new line there. I'll say authorization is the header that we want to add this in. Bearer is where you need to start this because it's a bearer token, and then paste your token in, okay? So I'll save this, I'll send the request again, and you can see we get the 200 response of okay, and then our message of hello Brian Morrison, which is what we had configured 2 videos ago when we were setting up our Go Lambdas for API Gateway. Okay, so how can we see this how can we see this actually working? So if I go into main.go, we're going to make some changes to the file here. So the first thing we need to do is we actually need to change this request type. Unbeknownst to me, AWS actually has 2 versions of this proxy request, and we need to use the v2 version. So let's get rid of this type here, and I'll type in API Gateway v2 proxy, if I could spell, API Gateway v2 proxy request. Like that. So your model should now read events.api gateway v2 HTTP request, and this is the newer version of this. And then what I'm also going to do is we're actually just going to convert this to JSON, to a JSON string. We're going to log it out so we can see the claims come through. So I'm going to type in JSTR because it's going to be my JSON. Actually, it's JBytes, which is going to be the bytes that are created, and an ERR to catch our errors. And we'll say JSON.Marshall, which is going to convert this specific object into it's actually a byte array that converts to JSON when you pass it to a string. So we'll pass in the request object, and then I'm going to check the ERR. I'm going to check the error just to make sure that we don't have anything there. And then unfortunately you can't return nil here, so we'll just return an empty gateway proxy response. And then that's going to handle the errors. And the final thing we're going to do is log.println. And then we're going to pass in a string version of our JBytes. There's a couple of things we got to replace here since we newed up an error above and the JBytes above as well. So we just got to get rid of the colons there so Go knows we're not creating those as new things. And then this should be what the completed version of the code looks like. So I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to open up this in File Explorer. We're going to delete both of these things. Main with no extension is the compiled binary of the Go application, and then the zip file. We'll delete those because we don't need them anymore. Okay, so in VS Code, we're going to open up a new terminal to build our code. So we're going to type in $env, because I'm on Windows, env GOOS equals Linux. Set that environment variable, and then go build main.go. Okay, so once that process is done, we should have just our main file. I head back into File Explorer. We're going to right-click on this, and we are going to send to a zip folder. So we have main.zip, which is what we're going to upload into AWS. We'll head back to AWS, and then go to Lambda. Let's find the function here that we're working with, which is this Hello World Lambda. I'll select that. And then scroll down a bit, upload from, select the zip file, and then let's upload that zip file. And click Save. Okay, so successfully updated the Hello World Lambda function. Let's go ahead and run that request one more time so we can get some output sent over to CloudWatch. So I'll go ahead and send request. You could see I got a 200 okay, so nothing changed with the response, but that's perfectly fine. Now, inside of our search here, we're going to search for CloudWatch and go ahead and open this guy up. Underneath the logs, we're going to select log groups. We'll open the log group for Hello World Lambda, and then we're going to select we got to sort by last event time, and we're going to select the first one from the list, which is this guy right here. Let's go ahead and open that up. And we can see there's this entry here that looks like it's the start of some JSON. If we expand this out, we can see a whole lot of stuff in here. The first one you can see is these are actually the headers. Here's that request token, or here's the JWT that was sent along with the request using that authorization header. And if I scroll down a little bit, you could see under request context, authorizer, JWT, and claims, all of those claims are actually abstracted automatically for us inside of AWS. So these are the values that we would use in a situation where we want to identify a specific user based on the request. You can see there's Cognito : username is set to this random GUID, but there's also sub down here which is set to the random GUID, both of which are unique IDs for that user record inside of Cognito. So if you're building something where you need to identify a user, those are the values you would use. If you enjoyed this content, do me a favor once again, subscribe, like, share the video. If you want to have further communications directly with me, the best place to do so is either on Twitter, my DMs are open, @BrianMMDev, or you can join our Discord, learnbuildteach.com, where I'm interactive in there pretty much every single day. In the next video, we're going to look and see how we can use all of this stuff, put it together to work with a database. Have a great week. Bye-bye.